Hello and welcome to my garden and the dinosaurs who live there. We're on Sunday the 14th of January, and considering we're in the depths of winter, it's not too bad a day today. We're a few degrees above freezing. We're about to get a run of about 4 or 5 days where the temperatures at night drop well below zero, maybe to as much as -5, so it is starting to get a bit chilly. We've had a little run of quite mild weather, but that hasn't stopped me, or the weather hasn't stopped me doing things in the garden over the past few weeks. There's tons to do. As you're probably aware if you're regular viewers of the videos on my channel, we moved into this house about 1.5 years ago, and as well as the house needing quite a lot of renovation work, the garden was completely overgrown, needed to get some trees down for safety as much as anything, and to sort of clear it out a little bit. It's a nice large garden, but it had been allowed to get very, very overgrown. So last year I started in my quest to clear areas and put down beds, and I really focused on getting some beds so that I could start growing some veg last year, and that worked really, really well. But there's certain areas of, well, there's just about all the garden still needs more work, but there's certain areas of the garden that need more work than others, and I've been trying to pick away at that. And my hope this year is that I can introduce a lot more colour into the garden, particularly at this top area, which I'll talk about more in a second. So I thought it'd be good to start off the year with a garden tour. So this is our January 2024 garden tour, and it will be good to be able to compare what the garden is now to where it was like this time last year by looking at the garden tours last year. And I'll also be able to refer to this going forward to hopefully see all of the great progress that I'm making, because some of it can be quite slow. I'm doing it all myself, including digging out all sorts of pernicious weeds and making beds and looking about compost and earth and wood chip, etc, etc. So it does take a little bit of time, but it is very, very fulfilling, which is just as well, really. Anyway, I will stop the intro now and let me take you around the garden mid-January 2024 so you can see what's happening. Now this is the top of the garden. I'm just standing at the entrance to the chicken run, and this is the area that last year not much happened with. It is the area that the chickens love to come and scratch, so you can see there and here are dust baths that they made themselves in the better weather. They love scratching in the dirt there and giving themselves a bath. And you can see the swing seat there that we like to sit on while we let the chickens out and watch them and just generally relax. So the dilemma in this area of the garden is I still want there to be plenty of room for the girls to scratch about, but I also want to make it a little bit more useful with regard to growing, and also much more colourful. So I've already started that, so let me just show you around what is happening in this area of the garden now. So the main challenge, or one of the main challenges in this area of the garden, is all of this. The sort of dried up stuff you see, that was cleavers. There was loads of cleavers, but there's just a whole ton of ivy here, right the way along the back fence there, and it's also a bit of a slope down. So whilst that part of the garden isn't necessarily going to be particularly useful for me for growing, if I could get it cleared, I could certainly get some plants of my preference in there rather than just this mass of ivy. So that's certainly work still to be done. Whether I get that done this year or not, I'm not sure. But what I have done, if you look over here, so here's the swing seat, and last year this area was where I had my potato pots growing all my potatoes, and those two metal beds actually were further over there, and I used them just for a sort of random bunch of veg. I had peas, tomato, swede and so on in there. And at the back you can see the beehive. But I wanted to, as I say, I want to have more colour here, and I want to have it a little bit more productive. So what I have done, and part of this is just to try and get the weeds sorted out. So you can see I've got this area here. That's actually a bed that I've made, so no dig flavour. So I just marked out the border with, I've got lots of rotten logs that I won't use in the log burner. The previous occupants had piles of rotten logs, and I'm finding at the moment, given that I don't have a bottomless pockets where spending money is concerned, I can't necessarily afford to buy new edging for all of the beds that I'm putting in, but I do want edging. So I'm just using the rotten logs, and they'll do as a starter for 10. And my plan here is to put in a couple of trees. Now you might be thinking this isn't a very large area to have trees, but my thinking is I'm going to have 2 apple trees on dwarf or semi-dwarf rootstock. So eventually they may grow to 8 feet or so, but I can keep them pruned down less than that if I want, maybe 8 to 10 feet. Pop one there and one there, and that will get some apples started. Now obviously it's going to take a couple of years for me to start getting any fruit at all, but it's a bit of a long-term project there. So we'll have a little apple there, little apple there. There's a space in the middle here that initially, while the apples are growing, the apple trees are growing, I'll maybe put a pot or a shrub or something like that just to even it out. So I moved the 2 metal beds from here, I moved them over to here and refilled them with old compost, a few twigs and small rotten branches at the bottom of them. Gradually, as I came up towards the top of the beds, some better compost, and in fact this one in the front here has got some a sort of soil enhancer on it. And I've already planted up this one. Here we have some, here we have some strawberries, and these were runners from my mature plants from last year. So we have strawberries in that bed. The bed over there, actually, I think I may use for onions. Seems a bit of a random mix. I may put more strawberries in there, but I'm getting near to the beehive over there, and I just wonder if the bees might be attracted to the strawberries. It might have been a bad idea putting these here, but they're in there now. So unsure, I may well use this for onions, but that's still to be determined. And then what you can see in between and around the beds there is wood chip. So I've made little paths there. There's weed suppressant fabric below, and that is just to try and deter any of the weeds that are existing in this area from coming through. I dug out as much as I could, but yeah, there were weeds aplenty. And if we look down here, just next to the swing seat, this bed that's just covered in mesh at the moment, that's to prevent the chickens from wanting to go and scratch. Another bed, another raised bed, or not raised bed, another bed of no dig variety I made here, again cardboard topped off with compost, and I put loads and loads of tulip and daffodil bulbs in there, so I'm hoping we'll get a great spring display in this bed again to add colour. Now if I walk through here, over at the bees, I've actually expanded the little fenced area around the bees. The fenced area is again relating to chickens. It's just to prevent them wandering over to and getting too close to the beehives. They could if they wanted to, because there's a gap there, but we'll sort that out. But anyway, I made this a bit bigger, and I'll put some more weed suppressant fabric down in the area that hasn't got it, and that's just in case I end up with a second hive of bees this year. Last year my hive split, it swarmed, and I couldn't manage to catch the swarm because it was way high up in the tree. So I'm going to try and if it undoubtedly they'll get to the point where they want to multiply again, and I'll try and manage it better this time and hopefully split the hive, and then I'll have 2 hives of bees potentially, but we'll see. At the moment the bees are in there all snuggled, hopefully, and keeping warm, and obviously they're not really appearing because it's far too cold for them. What I'm really chuffed about though is this area here. Up until last week, this was a really quite large pile of rotten logs. Now, in an ideal world, I wouldn't have moved the rotten logs because there was always the scope or the potential for critters living in there. And in fact, there were a few little field mice in residence in this pile of logs. But I really needed to get on and do what I wanted to do in this area. And as you see just here, there is another big pile of rotten logs adjacent. So actually, when I was moving this pile, the pile from here, 3 little field mice scuttled out and went into that log pile. So hopefully they're okay, and I didn't come across anything else necessarily. So don't do as I do. I don't, but in that it's probably not recommended, but I really had to get going. So the idea here is, now that this is all cleared, I've formed a path. So this path comes from where I'm the 2 metal beds and potentially where the apple trees will be, and it goes along by the back of the beehives over to a path that leads up the side of the garden. And then if I just turn round, just a little path as well will go down by the swing seat. Today I'm going to be putting weed suppressant fabric down there and heating myself up by barrowing wheelbarrow loads of wood chip on here. I've still got wood chip from the load that the tree surgeon dropped off last year. So I'll get all this all wood chipped. And the main purpose of doing all of this was to get this bed made. Again, I've used rotten logs, some of them quite large, all the way around the outside. Now this bed must be 9 feet by maybe 10 feet by 8 feet, something like that. I'll pace it out and see if I can work it out. But it's a nice big bed. There is one thing in it, because I had already planted this. It's not a heuchera, it's a heuchera cross, and I can't remember what the name of it is. Whoops, I'll look it up and pop it on the video. But it was planted in that spot last year, and it's doing fine, as you can see, nice and green still. But the rest I just dug over. There's loads of nettle roots and bramble roots and ivy roots all the way through this. So I was like, ugh. I did my best, and you can see that I've put cardboard over most of it now, and another job I'd like to get done today is to top that off with some compost to basically get that bed settled down for the rest of the winter so that I can plant into it in the spring. The reason I haven't put cardboard in that area is I actually put in some ranunculus claws into that area. They were a bit old, and I should have put them, I should have actually planted them October, November time when I got them. So whether they grow or not, I don't know. But they're in there, so we might see those surfacing in a few weeks' time. As for what I want to do to this bed, I want to get some shrubs, maybe 2 or 3 larger shrubs to put them in here. Maybe Phormium, Hebe, Skimmia, things of that ilk. And what I plan to do while they are still quite modest in size, over the first few years of the life of the bed, I will probably pop in some dahlias. Once the dahlias are growing, obviously the dahlias are tucked up at the moment, the tubers are tucked up right now, but I'll start them again in the spring, and I'll maybe pop them in this bed, 2 or 3 of them, and get colour in this bed as well. But just by having the shrubs in here, it takes away from the grey brown nature of what we have up in this part of the garden. So yeah, that's exciting. There's lots of potential for getting colour here. I'll be doing some other things. For example, I was gifted this hydrangea last year, and I'm going to take it out the pot this year and maybe put it over here somewhere, or in this area somewhere anyway. There's still a lot of clutter here. You can see there's a couple of pallets, and those pallets are destined to be used for a log store that I've not got round to yet. And here we have a bed that is doing great actually. At the back we've got some garlic, and at the front we've got some shallots. Just got, again, the mesh is over it predominantly to stop the chickens jumping in and scratching around, but also it does act as a sort of barrier to heavy rain and snow and so on. Then you can see my log pile. The logs at the back are probably going to stay there as a nice permanent feature for it acts as a little wall to the edge of the bee area, and it also is good for critters. And as I say, I think there's some little mice living in there now. These logs here are logs that I've put aside because, yes, they're rotten, but they're of a size and they're reasonably robust, so I'll be able to use those to edge any other beds that I create. And then we've got a couple more pallets again for my log store. Got piles here of, there's actually logs under there, and there are, obviously you see there's lots of ivy, and cleavers were there, and ivy and so on. And I want to cut some of this back because it gets a bit too high in the summertime, and it starts almost infringing on the bees. I don't mind having something like that in front of the bees. It makes them, as they come out the hive, go wee and fly away, rather than flying at a lower height where people might be walking by or whatever. Not that we get many people walking by there. So it's definitely work in progress up here, but I feel comfortable that it's going to be a lot brighter and more colourful this year than last, and that's all really I can hope for. This is my hosta corner. There's 3 pots that have got fairly large hostas in there sleeping at the minute, and then there's some hanging pots there that also have some little hostas in. I will be moving those on to larger pots and using the little pots for something else. Maybe get some strawberry runners in those. You can see my little robin friend sitting on that blue pot just beyond the bed there. Hello, Robin. And this is a bit of a messy area. Where isn't? The place where pots come to die. In this bed though, this was did have my sweet pea TP. This metal bed now has my elephant garlic. So the elephant garlic's looking good, looking great in fact. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've maybe got 9 elephant garlic in there, so quite happy with that. Okay, here we are next to the old shed and the new shed. You can see all the pots that I used through the year for potatoes and different plants and so on. And these 3 are housing some more garlic. That garlic hasn't come up yet. That is Carcassonne. That was stuff I bought in. The other garlic I showed you was my own Casablanca. So it grew here last year, so maybe it's just a little bit more forgiving with the environment and happy to sprout faster. But I'm sure this stuff will come up soon enough. This was a new bed last year, and there's 3 peonies in it. New peonies last year, so they didn't actually flower. Maybe they'll flower this year. I do need to tidy this bed up, as you can see. The area here with slightly different coloured soil, that's a sort of soil enhancer, and under there are some bulbs. I think they were irises I popped in there sort of late on. This is a bed that has a few ranunculus in, a few weeds in, and some, I think there was a couple of Aquilegia that were already in the place. The sort of light coloured stuff you see there, some chicken bedding and some chicken poo, I've just sort of spread that over to let it sort of break down over the rest of the winter. There isn't too much chicken poo in it because it is quite nitrogen full, so you don't want to sort of put it around stuff that's going to have, or beds that are going to have plants in too soon. I think I may have put a few bulbs in there actually, so we'll see how they go. This bed needs topped up with either some more soil enhancer or some compost or topsoil or whatever, and once I tidy out this bed, definitely that will need the same. And then looking down the garden, because it's quite bleak looking, isn't it, when you look through the through the camera lens. The sort of grassy area here, there are some beds that I used for flowers last year. Let's go down and see those. So this was some Rudbeckia. I've not cut it back yet, that's fine, I'll cut it back later. Then we had some snapdragons, and what they are, they were made just very quickly by putting the sort of mesh round, cardboard, and then some compost on top. I may make them into proper beds, get some proper edging this year, and I added a few more for as we go down the garden there. My plan for these is to have, I would love to have a sort of load of sort of cottage garden type plants, so little poppies and cornflowers and snapdragons and oh, you name it. Off the top of my head I've forgotten, but you know, a variety of things in each of them, so that we get some nice colour quite a lot of the time through the season. And if I swing round here, this was my main area for renovation last year. This was just initially full of shrubs and full of weeds, and it was horrendous. There was so much crocosmia, and crocosmia is just, oh, it's a nightmare. It looks pretty for a little bit, but actually it multiplies and multiplies, and you end up with real huge big root systems that are like bricks to dig out, and I had to take the pickaxe out to actually clear some of that. So anyway, we cleared this space, and I put weed suppressant fabric around the beds that I put in, and then wood chip on those. I put up this little arch. So there's a rose at this side, and there's a couple of other climbers whose name escapes me on either side that will maybe get growing up the the arch this year. This was a bed that was there originally, so the edging of it's all falling to bits. This I intend to be a brassica bed. That I had my onions in it last year and they were great. I actually popped out, and you'll maybe see in another video, I popped out some itty bitty cauliflower, cabbage and broccoli in here a little while ago, because they were sort of languishing in pots, and I've put round some soil enhancer. I've put the netting over, and we'll just see if they survive the winter, whether the frost gets them or whether slugs get them. We'll see, but they're in there anyway because I really had to do something with them. This is a brassica bed also, and here we have the remnants of my Brussels sprouts. Still got some of them to harvest, and then we've got a couple of purple sprouting broccoli, which I hope will start giving me purple sprouting broccoli in the coming weeks. I also had some nice swede in there, and I can't remember what else. And here's another one of my success stories. This big pot has got my parsnips in. I was actually going to dig out the rest of the parsnips today. I don't know whether the pot soil is going to be frozen or not. I'll leave it a little while and see if I can get them out, and if I'm not eating them all, I'll process them and pop them in the freezer. And then come February time, I'll be popping, well, I'll sort of amend the soil a little bit, tidy it up, and I'll be putting more parsnips in here. This bed doesn't have much happening at the moment, although this was a very productive bed. I had lots of beetroot and chard and, oops, what else did I have? Beetroot, chard. I even had a cucumber growing in here, and a variety of other bits and pieces, lettuce and so on. I'm thinking, however, that at least part of this bed I'm going to give over to strawberries, because here's my strawberry bed that I made last year, and that's the only bed in this whole growing area here that doesn't get sun 70% plus of the day. Because we've got the run there, it just manages to miss quite a lot of the sun in the height of the day. So I'm going to move these, not today obviously, I'm going to move these into this bed. There's some pots there with some rather rubbish looking leeks, but I'm leaving them be and harvesting them as and when. And then that little mound looks like I've buried someone. That actually has my rhubarb underneath, so I just plonked some compost there, and that's got the large rhubarb plant. And then there's a variety of pots and things that I had various things in that I will tidy up and reuse the compost. And that's us down to the polytunnel. So early on in the spring I had some lovely pansies and violas and such like in pots along the edge there of the polytunnel. There's a large sleeper there helping to keep the polytunnel cover taut, and I just popped them on that. So there's not much happening. Well, there's nothing happening at the moment, but we'll get that all tidied up when we get some spring flowers. And then here is a raspberry bed. There's a variety of raspberries. I think there's 2 sets of 3 that are summer fruiting, and there's a set of 3 that is autumn fruiting. This bed here is full of tulips and alliums, and I need to just do a bit of a weed. I can see some things coming up already. Do a bit of a weed around those and get some more compost in here to top it up. I need to do that PDQ before everything starts springing to life, because it does really need a bit of a top up. but hopefully if it looks as nice as it did last year, there should be lots of colour. Looking in the polytunnel, that's some fleece that I'm using to fleece some things. I've got some strawberries, again some runners in pots. There's a couple of little kitchen basins with some lettuce in, and down here there are some more shallots, the shallots that I couldn't fit out in the run. I couldn't fit out in the raised bed at the top. I brought down here and popped in pots. There's some carrots there, but I think they're not going to come to much, but we'll see. And then there's some little carrots here. These are little balls, and I could probably harvest them actually before they go to mush, or the tops go to mush because of the frost. So not too much happening in the polytunnel. There's some straw on the floor there. There's actually a bag of straw there that I use for putting into the quail runs to give them straw to play in. So I'm just sort of keeping it in here just now, so it gets a wee bit messy, but that will get tidied up easy enough. So yeah, that's the polytunnel. And then over here is my squash bed. I had some great success with squash last year. I'm going to grow some different varieties this year, and before I get to that point, I'm going to make sure that I've got a nice border around here, a path set out around the squash bed, because it all got a bit crazy last year with the squash plants growing into the weeds that were there and so on. So I've already made a start there, and that's cleared, and I can put some weed suppressant fabric down. Now, last bit for today is here. So I'm just standing at the polytunnel. This is a path that leads down some steps from the polytunnel, and this is completely covered in ivy. Now, a couple of weeks before Christmas, I spent a lovely, she says, 4 hours cutting a lot of this back. You wouldn't be able to tell, but it was much more in volume, and in fact all of these stones were completely covered in ivy. I had no idea they were even there. And the reason I did it was actually because you can see there's the quail run there. One of the quail escaped when I was feeding them. It decided to fly right over my head and right the way up here, landed somewhere in here. And in my quest to try and find the quail, I ended up very carefully cutting back a lot of this. Sadly, I never did find the quail, so she's either living her best life free range, or to be fair, more likely has now fed somebody, a cat, a rat, a bird, a whatever. Yeah, sadly. But yeah, that's just the way of it. But anyway, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, and people will maybe cry in dismay at the amount of weed suppressant fabric I'm using, but there's just too much ivy here for me to actually dig out myself. It's just horrendous. So I'll cut it back as much as I can, and I'll put a few runs of weed suppressant fabric here, and I'll pop some beds or pots on here so I can get some growing space. There'll still be some, because it actually slopes down, then there's a drop down to the patio, so there's still some areas that I won't be able to do, but maybe in time I'll be able to get this ivy under control. It's just a mass of it, you can see it all. It's horrendous. I hate it. I really hate it. I'm sure it's good for wildlife, but this amount is not good for my mental or physical well-being. So yeah, so this is going to be give me more growing area again, which is quite exciting. Right, well, I think I've given you the full tour there. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. I'll need to now go and start doing some work out here, getting the beds filled, getting some weed suppressant fabric laid, since it is not too bad a day, and it is going to take a bit of a nosedive, as I said earlier, to really, really cold temperatures, when I'm going to be much less likely and less inclined to do work out here. Are you doing any projects in your garden this year, or are you doing anything over winter time? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear. Meanwhile, please, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I would love for you to subscribe. You just need to click the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, and it enables you to get more involved with the things that I'm doing on the channel. And if you click the alarm bell, that means that you will be alerted anytime I post new videos. For now though, stay warm, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Bye bye for now. Bye.